Thank you. Welcome to the June 23rd, 2019 meeting of the Hendersonville Board of Mayor and Aldermen. If you all who are joining me here, if you all could stand with me, we're going to begin as we do all our meetings, and that's with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. So please continue to stand with me. Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together, and thank you for this opportunity to serve you and serve our community. And thank you for the wonderful place that we live here. Also, thank you for the people who protect us right here and the people who protect us far away. And thank you for the wisdom you've given us, and help us to use that wisdom to do your work tonight. And help us to remember that above all, we should be kind. And help us to remember all these things as we go from here. And remember your Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. I'm going to entertain a motion to accept our agenda. So moved. We have a motion to accept our agenda. We have a motion. Alderman Edwards, is that a second?
No, I was going to after Alderman Cunningham, I was going to add something.
Alderman Cunningham, is that a second?
No, well, it's second, but then I wanted to.
There we go.
We need
We have a motion, a second. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. Being that we didn't have our finance meeting today, because we didn't have a quorum, I need to remove item G from the agenda because it didn't go through finance. But I have a special call finance meeting set up for 3 weeks from now, unless it doesn't have to go through finance. It's just giving you the authority to sign a contract.
That went through Public Works, Alderman Skidmore.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
so I defer to you, Mayor, and to our city attorney if that has to even go through finance.
I don't think it has to, Mayor. I mean, the board can certainly debate it and talk about it tonight if they want to. This has been kicked around for 2 years now.
Okay, then that's fine. Then I'll
Appreciate that.
take it off my agenda for in 3 weeks.
I appreciate that. Alderman Edwards.
I'd like to move to amend the agenda to include items from our city attorney about our Hendersonville's 50th anniversary, and we can include that wherever.
Should we put it down? You put it after Planning Commission, or you turn it at the very end?
Wherever you prefer.
I'll tell you, honestly.
Well, we could do it after the, where does the attorney prefer to have it?
Just put it after committee reports. It's only going to take a couple of minutes.
Okay, after committee reports is fine.
And it's 50th anniversary report from the city attorney?
Comments that the city attorney would like to make regarding that, please.
Where are we putting that?
He's just going to put it after committee reports.
Okay.
Okay. Motion, I need a second on that, if anybody would like to. We have a motion, and a second. All those in favor of that addition, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. All those in favor of accepting the agenda as accepting the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. And that passes unanimously. Next, we have a presentation. We have two of them. Bailey, could you come up and join me, please? Thank you. You could come over here. I'm doing this a little bit out of order because she was the first person I saw right there, and then I realized it's out of order, but I'm glad you're right here. I need to tell you a little bit about Bailey Guy. She is a 16-year-old Hendersonville High School junior, and she has been crowned Miss Teen USA 2019. She has been completing a beauty pageant since she was 5 years old. And in order to prepare for the state competition, she began exercising regularly, eating healthier, staying up to date on her knowledge of current events, and becoming more self-aware of who she was as a person, and helped her to be the best possible version of herself. As Miss Greater Nashville Teen USA, Bailey competed against nearly 30 other students from across the state in interview, activewear, evening gown, and onstage question competition during the pageant. And Bailey is to be commended for promoting literacy and youth leadership through the organization she founded 4 years ago. It's called Be a Reader, Be a Leader. She created the organization to encourage children to enjoy reading as much as she does. She also organized a book drive in 2017 that enabled her to donate more than 400 books to children across Hendersonville. As Miss Tennessee Teen USA, she plans to have another book drive with a goal of donating more than 2,000 books to Tennessee children. Her involvement at HHS also includes the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FBLA, DECA, National Honor Society, Beta Club, and Movement Club, and she's also a member of the tennis team. I don't know where she finds all the time for this, but that's wonderful. We're very proud of her accomplishments, and it's wonderful to have her as a Hendersonville citizen representing us and doing such a good job of it. Would you like to say anything, Bailey?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Clary. It's such an honor to represent Hendersonville as Miss Tennessee Teen USA. And actually, throughout my year, I've been able to do so many incredible things. And I know that when I first began my year with my title, I had a goal of donating over 2,000 books to kids across the state. But in my most recent book drive, I was actually able to donate over 5,000 books to kids across Tennessee. So that's been such a great experience for me as Miss Tennessee Teen USA. And recently I competed at Miss Teen USA and was able to make top 15. So that was really, really awesome. And I've just been able to experience so many things that most 17-year-olds don't get to do. So it's been a really great year, and this has made it even better. Thank you.
Give this to you. You get to keep that. Thanks so much. Thanks for representing Hendersonville so well. We appreciate it. Thank you. Hunter Crawford. As Hunter makes his way up here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. This is to recognize Hunter as an outstanding citizen, and this is why. This is given in honor of your heroic aid in performing CPR, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, on Bob Bedell on Saturday, May 11, 2019, at the Foxland Country Club. Hunter is only 18 years of age and a resident of Hendersonville. His father is a captain at the Madison Fire Station, and he had recently completed a CPR course and required his son Hunter to complete it with him. And by his performing CPR before the paramedics arrived, Hunter clearly saved this man's life. Hunter, your selfless act to aid those in need is a credit to your character, and it serves as evidence of your dedication to the philosophy of service to others, so often expected but rarely acknowledged. The city of Hendersonville is proud of our citizen, Hunter. Thank you so much. Do you want to say anything? Okay, cool.
And Mr. Mayor, may I say one word?
Absolutely.
Since I'm the guy he saved. It's a pleasure and honor to be in front of the mayor and all the folks here that run Hendersonville. This guy was incredible. Now, I don't have a clue what happened, so I was going to ask my wife to make a comment or two. Do you want to? And thank you very much. And we welcome Hunter's family and our family as well. And I know she'll be brief.
I will be brief. So Hunter and my daughter are boyfriend and girlfriend. My daughter graduated from high school on May the 11th, and we were having her graduation party. At about 7:25 that evening, as we were taking decorations out of the room, we walked out and found my husband lying in the bushes. Went over, and he became unresponsive and started turning blue. And I remember turning around on the steps, screaming for someone to call 911, and telling my sister that my husband had just passed away. It was a very difficult evening for our family. And I remember during the course of that listening to different family members that were on the phone with 911, and I heard one of them say that they thought he had just passed away. So at that moment in time, I thought I was a widow. My daughter, who's 18, came up to me and she said, "Mom, don't worry about this, Hunter's got it." And no offense, Hunter, but I thought, what could he possibly know to do in this situation? I don't know what to do in this situation. But sure enough, he worked on Bob for quite some time while we waited for the paramedics and the ambulance to get there. And my daughter came back a few minutes later and she said, "Bob's breathing again." So Hunter, you will always have a place in my home, and you will always have a place in my heart, and I'm just so thankful. There's a Bible verse, it's my favorite one, it's Jeremiah 29:11, and it says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, and plans to give you a hope and a future." And Hunter, you gave me a hope and a future that night when you saved my husband. And so I'm thankful for Hunter. I'm thankful for a father that had the insight to teach his son how to do what he did that night. And I couldn't be more proud of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Hunter, will you point out your dad for us? There it is. Thank you. Thank you all very much. We appreciate that. Next, we have public hearing. We have none, and then minutes. I entertain a motion to approve our minutes of July 9th, 2019. We have a motion and a second. I need to mention one thing, is I incorrectly applied Robert's Rules of Order to Alderman Robertson that night. I've looked it up since then, and I told him that we couldn't second an amendment to defer. That was wrong. What I meant to say is that it didn't apply at that time. We had to come back to that, and I apologize for misapplying that. So all those in favor of approving our July 9th, 2019 minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have citizen comments. Here are the guidelines. Speakers must identify themselves by name and address. Public comment shall be limited to 5 minutes per individual, which time is not transferable to other speakers. All comments are to be directed to the presiding officer, not to aldermen, city staff, or other members of the public. Comments must address issues, not individuals or personalities. Personal attacks shall not be tolerated. Comments may support or oppose particular issues or measures, but the motives of those with different views shall not be questioned or attacked. Malicious comments will not be allowed. Speeches for or against particular candidates running for public office shall not be allowed. Dana Heyer, 167 Cumberland Drive.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board. This is a familiar place to be. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the former Assistant Finance Director for the city. I'm here to address the appointment of the new Finance Director. I'm not here to discuss the individual, and my comments in no way negatively negatively reflect on the current leaders and leadership in this city. But I do want to bring to light a concerning issue regarding the pattern of hiring leaders in this city. When I was hired in 2008, my boss, Mary Lou Piper, was the only female director in this city. She left in 2009. Since that time, this city has replaced every department head, and some multiple times. The police chief, 2 fire chiefs, 2 parks directors, a planning director, a codes director, an HR director, 2 public works directors, and now 2 finance directors. Every single one of those replacements has been a white male. 12 times in 10 years, not one female, not one person of color, not one minority has been considered for leadership position in the city. Now this board is about to appoint another white male. Just for comparison's sake, the city of Gallatin has 4 female leaders and 1 male of color. The city of White House and Goodlettsville each have 3 female leaders. The city of Mount Juliet, where I work now, has 5 female leaders and 1 male of color. You have 0. Your city website says that you are committed to providing equal opportunities regardless of race, sex, color, religion, national origin, age, or disability. I work with financial professionals all over this area, and there are many women and minorities in this field. When this item comes up for discussion, I hope that you will ask the following questions. What is the city doing to promote the hiring of women and minorities in leadership positions? Were there any qualified female or minority applicants for this position? What was the process for selecting individuals and candidates and interviewing them? Were any qualified female or minority individuals included in this same process? We live in a culturally diverse community where people of different races, religions, nationalities interact on a daily basis, yet the diversity is lacking in city government leadership. Even this board has 2 strong, independent, intelligent women representing their wards. Diversity in the workplace is not only required by law, but it's also essential. in promoting new ideas, different perspectives, and unique problem-solving skills. And this city could use some problem-solving skills about now. This is 2019. We can do better than this. Thank you.
Dana, thank you. Tyrone J., 1019 Mansker Farms.
I yield the balance of my time.
Mike Hudson, 114 Savely Court.
Hello, Board. Mike Hudson, 114 Savely Court. You seen me last time I was up here. This time, I'm up here because hopefully coming in front of you in the next 4 to 6 months, there's going to be a resolution or whatever to actually pass 25% to buy out the rest of my house from FEMA. Okay? I ask that all of you approve it so I can leave and leave you alone. Okay? I've been here for 10 years. I don't want to be here another day. I flooded last night when it rained all night. Got 8 inches of water up around my house. Saturday night, it's getting worse. I've had an engineer look at the house. The actual piers on the house, the foundation is starting to scour. And when they start to scour, that means it has to be demolished. Okay? So I either get the engineers and everybody else involved and let them fight it out with the insurance, or else I just leave and let it go bankrupt. Y'all make the decision. I need some help, guys. I have busted y'all's emails up. Okay? I need to know what's going on. Somebody needs to introduce the resolution. Somebody needs to get on the ball. That's all I got.
Mike, thank you. Gary Woodward, 125 Ashington Circle.
I trained it to walk so I can get here quicker. I still hadn't figured out how to make it get me up easier. I'm working on that. Anyway, improvement. I've been here before. Thank you. You probably know who I am just by sight now. But first, let me say thank you for continuing to smile when you see me and not run away. And even return a few calls when I call. I hope I don't badger anybody. But as a public citizen, and I'm interested in, and I believe this city, Hendersonville, and I believe in what you do to run the city. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for listening to me, for putting up with me. But in the interest of my 5 minutes and not running over, I want a brief history point, and then I'm going to see, as they say, if I can't pull a rabbit out of the hat, to make something that works for me and works for you and for the community. Back in 2007, there was something called the Hendersonville Tamara Steering Committee that was followed by the Hendersonville Horizons Steering Committee. And I think there's 2 members of that committee here tonight, Mr. Robertson and I believe Mr. Woodcock. I don't see him, but he was on it. So you have 2 people. If he's here. So there's several people here that were on that Horizons Committee. My point is that's the history. That was created by Boma to look at the aspects of living, working, and playing in this beautiful community, and looking at a 10 to 15 year long-range plan of how to find out what it is, what you want, and how to get there. All right. Following that, somewhere in the research, I saw something called a Beautiful Hendersonville Committee. That would be a beautiful thing to have. As best I can tell, it's inactive, it's defunct, it's not there and not working right now. If I look at, and I don't know from the presentation I found online, if the top rectangle is the front or the back of a postcard, it looks like it may have been. It was put out. It says, take the survey. For questions, call Keith Free. I think he's still here now. He was a senior planner at that point. And then on the other side, it says Hendersonville Horizons. And it says city elected officials have established a committee of community leaders to recommend to the mayor and board of aldermen long-term strategies to address existing needs and plan for the growth of the city. Skip down several lines. Let your voice be heard. Please fill out the survey and volunteer to serve on a task force. My first introduction day one into this city was when I walked up to the front desk and said, I'm a retired person that now lives in Hendersonville. I would like to volunteer my time and talents to help make Hendersonville a better place to live. That's live, play, and work. That's making Hendersonville beautiful. I think that the beautiful Hendersonville Committee is something that should be reactivated, and if I could pull a rabbit out of the hat, I'd pull off my hat and I'd find the rabbit. Wait a minute. I don't have a hat. I got a pocket. Oh my goodness, look. Create beautiful Hendersonville Committee. That's what I'd like to ask for you to do tonight or as soon as possible. And I'll even bring the magic rabbit up here. And if you'll pass that on, my contribution. And I hope I kept that within 5 minutes, and I brought a little bit of levity tonight because this ought to be a fun and a wonderful place to enjoy and make it a beautiful place for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. Next, we have committee reports. Chairman Cunningham, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. We did not have a quorum tonight, so our regularly scheduled meeting did not take place tonight. One person was out of the country, and the other committee member, and we need to remember her in our prayers. Jim Waters was attending to his wife, who is pretty ill right now. I was going to discuss the Republic audit and the accounting for $50,000 to Waste Pro. I don't know if we have any information on that yet. Do we have any?
As I mentioned in an email earlier to you, I'll get that to you when I have it. It's not.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank
That's
you.
the end of my report.
Chairman Sprouse, General Committee.
I think Mr. Brown is.
Are you waiting for public safety or?
Finance Committee question for you and her and you.
I'm not Finance Committee Chairman. Chairman, or Alderman Brown.
You are the chairman of this board, though, sir.
We do not have a report from that, but go ahead.
I have a canceled check for $2,500. I have a bill, an invoice from McMurray and Fox and Associates for $2,500. And I have a purchase order for $2,500 that states to verify the number of homes in the city of Hendersonville that are receiving trash removal services for the minimum the past 4 years for Republic Services. The purchase order was dated May 17, or 4/8/19. The invoice was dated 4/30 of 19, and the check was cut on 5/24 of 19. I have asked, I know Mr. Sprouse has asked.
Alderman Brown, I think we need a motion to add this to the agenda, because this is really not part of the Finance Committee report.
So moved.
So we have a motion to add this to the agenda. This is going to require 2/3 of a vote to do so. So we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on this? Alderman Robertson.
Only discussion, would this best be handled inside the Finance Committee first and then let the Finance Committee bring that? I mean, many times I've brought up questions and say, well, you need to come to the appropriate committee. I mean, I don't mind it, but it just seems like to me a better procedure would be to follow the committee structure, take those questions to Chairman Cunningham and let them air them there and then come forward at that time. So my only question is sequence. If my
Alderman Robertson, actually, I've already taken this to the Public Works Committee, and I pledged them to follow up with it. And I'm happy to answer the question, Finance Committee or the Public Works Committee. I do not have answers tonight, and I've tried to answer questions before that have jumped up. I mean, I have failed, and I've answered those incorrectly. And so it really works better. I agree with you. It really works better to go through the committee system. Anybody else want to discuss this motion?
Yes.
I do.
Alderman Sprouse.
Dr. Robinson, I agree with you completely on that. Unfortunately, we're at a situation that's been discussed at committee without answers. It's been discussed via email with no answers. We've been told that those are things that we can talk about, we should talk about in committee, and we should talk about in emails, and we shouldn't escalate to the board. But if Mr. Brown's bringing some information forward that's been discussed at this level previously, I think it probably needs to be resolved at this level.
Alderman Robertson.
The mayor's already told us that he's not prepared to respond to these questions tonight. He hasn't, according to what he said, he hasn't had time to be briefed and prepared.
Mayor doesn't even know what the question
Alderman
is.
Brown, Alderman Robertson, go ahead.
I mean, I'm just saying.
He doesn't even know what the question
Alderman
is.
Brown,
Eddie.
Alderman Robertson, please go
Throw
ahead.
me out,
Alderman
Mayor.
Brown.
Throw me out.
Alderman Robertson, please go ahead.
I've said enough.
Okay, appreciate that. Alderman Brown, go ahead.
First of all, Mr. Robertson, he doesn't even know what the question is. Secondly, it's concerning finances with the city and answers that we need, and I would think that you'd want those answers. But if you don't, that's fine. We'll move on. I'll talk to Ms. Nixon. She can pull records and she can get the answers. Where would you rather have the answers at?
Through the committee.
I call the question on the motion.
Alderman Robinson. Alderman Strauss, anything else?
I call the question on the motion.
Okay, we need a two-thirds vote to call the question, and that's going to require, how many do we have?
Can I ask what the
Alderman
question?
Robertson, go ahead.
What is the question?
The question is to vote on, I assume the question is to vote on whether or not we're going to
let's
take a
just vote
vote on
add it to
adding
the
this.
agenda.
Excuse me, I assume the question is to vote on whether or not we're going to vote on cutting off discussion. Do I have that correct?
If we just want to go ahead and have the vote, we don't have to call the question.
Okay. Let's see, with 11 of us, we need 8 people to approve this, to add it to the agenda. Kay, will you call the roll, please?
Vote.
Is this to add it to the agenda?
This is to add it to the agenda.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Cunningham. Aye. Edwards.
No.
Hayes.
Yes.
Petrelli. Yes. Robertson.
No.
Skidmore.
Aye.
Sprouse.
Aye.
Clary.
No. Okay. That passes 8-3. Alderman Brown, go ahead.
Where are we at now? Back to
We're
the question?
we're on your report.
We're on public safety, or
We're on your report concerning whatever it is that you just added
it's
to
not
the
a
agenda.
report. It's a question. I was just stating basically that I've done my research before I asked the question. And I'll go back and restate that now since we're official. I have a check for $2,500 that was cut on May the 24th. I have an invoice for $2,500 that was billed on 4/30, and I have a purchase order that was sent out in April. Okay? All this has been taken care of. Several people have asked, including me, where is this audit report that we've asked for? I asked you in an email yesterday where this was, and I said, no, I would like to have a copy of it. Could you please email it to me? And you told me it's not complete yet. I just happen to know some people at Murray and Associates, and I know the lady that did the audit, and she told me it was completed on 4/29. The city recorder doesn't have a copy of it for her files, and she's supposed to have a copy of any of those things. Public Works doesn't know about it, so I'm asking you, where is that audit report, Mayor?
There's more to that audit report than from one firm, and once I have the opportunity, I will get that all to you. We've got a meeting later on this week about more of it, and I believe I explained every bit of that in an email to you yesterday. I don't understand why this doesn't work to go through the committee system and why it's so important to bring it up in front of a bunch of people and on TV. I do not understand why that is so pressing that we need to do it that way.
I would consider a no answer from you and a yes answer from them that we've already paid for, not the truth. You put that however you want to.
May I ask a question?
I just want the audit report.
Are we finished with your report?
I have a question regarding
We need to add your question to the agenda. What would you like to add to the agenda?
I voted to add this as a topic of discussion.
I believe
in the interest of transparency and
second.
accountability, let's have the discussion.
Hold on one second. What was your motion, Alderman Brown?
I didn't make a motion.
I made the motion
to add this to the agenda?
You basically made that for me.
I made the motion.
So.
What was your motion?
My motion was as it's a topic of discussion.
And I seconded that motion.
I never made a motion.
Without objection, we'll go ahead and add it, and we'll continue the discussion here. Go ahead, Alderman Sprouse.
Can you just help us set expectations? Because the previous expectation is that we had appropriated money for McMurray and Associates to prepare an audit. From all indications, McMurray and Associates has finished their work, presented it to the city has paid for it. Now, what's the next step? What is the additional work that needs to be done? What is the nature of that work? who inside or outside the city is performing that, and how long should we anticipate that to take before it's finished? And is there any additional cost that we're going to be expected to do? Because if someone says, we're going to have this company do this, and this company said they've done it, I think anyone should have any right to expect that the project is done. But if there's something else we should expect, let us know that. And I think, yes, I'm big on committees, and I'm big on you say send emails and talk about these things. And when they happen, the answers aren't there or the answer is not correct. So I think that this is something that you can help us with right now. What should we expect the next steps to be? Who is performing them? And how long should it take before they're completed? And that's it. That's it. That's all I need to know.
Alderman Sprouse, would you agree that being prepared helps people answer questions?
I think being prepared helps people be mayor.
Could you answer my question for me, please?
Mayor, I'm going to ask your question. I'm going to ask you the question. Do you know the steps that need to be done? You said that there were some additional steps that need to be done.
If you could, let me come back to that, but I want to sort of finish the point here. Would you agree that if I had been prepared, then possibly I could have answered these questions better?
You know, I'm not expecting a big report in details. But I'll give you an example. I'm taking a trip this weekend. I don't know exactly what time I'm going to leave, but I have a pretty good plan of when I'm going to leave. I have a pretty good plan of how we're going to drive to get there and how long it's going to take us to get there. I'm not asking for huge details. You just told this board a few minutes ago that there were some additional steps that needed to happen, some additional people needed to be involved, and all I'm saying is if you're prepared to tell us that there are additional steps, then be prepared to tell us what they are. And if you're going to tell us that there are going to be additional people involved, be prepared to tell us who you are. I mean, this is about accountability. This is about transparency. And one cannot say when he doesn't want to answer the question, we shouldn't have the discussion, or they're not prepared to give even the basics. I don't want the big report, but when you say there's another step, who is that? What's that next step? Just give me the one next step. Give me the one next person who's involved with this.
About 2 years ago, we had a meeting when I was asked about some checks or some contracts that I signed. And I did my best to answer those questions, and I was absolutely wrong. And I did that based on memory. I shouldn't have tried to answer the questions. It caused a lot of heartache for a long, long time, and I gave erroneous answers. And I apologized for that the next day. I did some research the next day and found out that I was wrong. I am very much afraid that if I answer these questions without any preparation on this, that I will answer it incorrectly again. I don't understand why it is important that we ask these questions right here, when I was very clear in an email to 2 people in the past couple days, that when we have that report, that I will get it to them. I was very, very clear about that.
Do we have the report?
There has been no evidence at all that I am hiding anything. None whatsoever. Yet that is certainly the impression that's being given here.
Have you received the report?
Because, and I mentioned this to the Public Works Committee, that I wanted to make sure that we have everything we need before we go forward with what we have. It does not make sense, and there were comments in the Public Works Committee about civil and possible criminal actions. I am not about to bring forward anything that is incomplete that could have those possible ramifications. Those were not my words. That was from some of the aldermen in the committee report. I do not understand why continuously we have members of this board ambush other members of this board. If we are trying to do the work of the city, I think it is best that we give each other the opportunity to prepare. And if we are trying to find information, I think it's best that we give people the opportunity to gather that information. Again, I do not feel comfortable answering at this time. There are too many answers and there's too much information that I fear that I would get wrong. And as a person who gave incorrect information mistakenly in the past, I'm not about to do it again. Alderman Hayes. I will do it as soon as I have it, however. Alderman Hayes.
Mayor Clary. I still have the floor.
Go ahead.
I'm one of the new aldermen, and I got to tell you, the most frustrating thing that I have found in these last few months is that it seems like almost everything, communication from you is top secret. If it's something you don't want to talk about, you claim sunshine laws. Oftentimes, there's no deliberation, it's just a simple question or an encouragement on my part. But this in particular is an issue because the garbage company that we've just signed a contract with is still not clear about how many homes they're picking up. So this was an audit that I think that you asked for. And whatever results they've given you, can you not just give us that so we could at least inform the whole board? I find it very difficult to get any information.
Again, you're asking me to work on memory right here. Had I been given the opportunity to take this to committee, we'd done it, and I already did that. So for you to say that it's difficult to get information, I voluntarily went to that committee and gave them the information I had at the time.
This is just one thing.
Excuse me. So
One
it's very
thing.
difficult for me to listen to somebody say that I withhold information when I voluntarily took it to them.
It's all top secret.
Why was it top secret when I took it to the committee?
I don't know.
Committee has this number?
I took the report, I took the information.
Committee has this number?
I reported to the committee where we were in the process at that time. And I told them when we moved further along, I would give them more information. Alderman Brown.
Mr. Mayor, I still haven't yielded the floor. I asked the question, you answered it.
Alderman Brown, you or Alderman Sprouse?
Now, I'm just going to go back and say that we signed a purchase order. We've had an invoice sent to us. The people from McMurray Associates say their audit is complete and have been delivered, and I would like to see the results of the audit. You're telling me that it's not complete.
Again, there were more than one parts to that audit. There were more than one firm involved.
More than one firm involved.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just want to see the results of this piece right here. Is all I want to see, that we paid for and that you have. If you have that in your office, I'll be glad to call for a recess before you can go get it.
I do not have that right now.
That doesn't surprise me.
Okay.
Alderman Sprouse.
Has a copy of the report been delivered by McMurray and Associates to anyone in the city of Hendersonville, including yourself?
I don't know.
Our acting public works director approved the check being paid. Could he answer that question?
He's not here.
Okay. Do you know who those other parties are who have to be involved, the other agencies that have to be involved with this and doing the accounting?
I don't.
Okay. Was our original appropriation of this funds for McMurray and Associates, so would that require an additional appropriation from the city, from this board?
If it had required additional appropriation from this board, I would have brought it to this board.
We hope. That hasn't been the history. If there's a need for there to be potential criminal or civil issues, illegal issues to be resolved, would it be appropriate for us to call right now for an executive session and our attorney could brief us on what those are?
Those were not my words.
Okay. But you can tell us right now, you have not received, definitively, you have not received that report from McMurray and Associates. No copy and
I cannot tell you that. I cannot tell you if I have or I have not.
Okay. What do you need to know if you've received that or not?
What?
I mean, what do you need to know? How do you need 10 minutes to go check your email? To go check a file? To go check to see the authorization that the Public Works Director had to go and to play that? I mean, I would think that for work performed, there would be some physical copy, some physical evidence that the work was performed before a check's cut.
I don't know what I need to know, and I'm going to go back to something that we said earlier, is that I was hoping for kindness in the meeting. There's a reason that I put those items in my prayer. It's not just a standard prayer. It's what I hope for in every meeting. I was hoping for kindness.
Mayor, I'm being very kind. We're being very kind. We're being very patient. But there is an issue when you have to deal with transparency and accountability, that when you're dealing with public money, with dealing with public issues, that we have to be transparent. And a repeated pattern of saying, I don't know, I'm not prepared to talk about this, whenever the questions get difficult, or to say that you're being ambushed when someone's asking for accountability, I'm extremely troubled. It is amazing to me the number of times that I end up getting into dad mode, and I feel like I'm talking more to a teenager in some of these situations. Because it's just one of those that we need to get through these matters, and we're being extremely kind and extremely patient. And I heard those prayers, and I share those words when we do pray. But we just can't talk about keeping the peace when the questions get difficult. Thank you.
The reason this question is difficult because I had no preparation for it all. Y'all had every opportunity to prepare to come up with these questions. I had zero opportunity to come up with preparation to answer them. Next, we have our General Safety Committee. Alderman Sprouse.
General Committee will meet in 2 weeks. We have recommended items B, C, D, E, and F on tonight's agenda.
Alderman Brown, Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Our committee met tonight on a special call meeting. We discussed 2 items. One was the use of UTVs in the parks for safety while our parks are operational. Both our fire director and our parks director addressed those issues. We will probably be coming within a couple weeks to ask for some appropriation to keep those UTVs running in the parks through the end of this baseball, soccer, softball parks year. So that discussion. We'll be waiting on some numbers. We also had ordinance 2019-31, an ordinance amending the Hendersonville Municipal Code, Title 15, Chapter 6. What that boils down to in a nutshell is that we are going to ask all commercial vehicles that are pulling trailers, specifically those that have lawnmowers, to have safety cones, one put in the front, one put in the back of the vehicle while they're on the street in your yard cutting it, just for low light safety and safety in general. So that'll be coming before you in 2 weeks to be passed. That's all. Thank you.
Alderman Skidmore, Public Works.
Thank you very much. Our past couple of weeks have been very exciting in Public Works, and a lot of things going on within in Public Works. I do not have the minutes of our special called meeting that we had for dealing with garbage, but I do want to appreciate the aldermen that were able to make it on that special called meeting. As the mayor and I had spoken briefly about it, that we both agreed that it was a very positive committee meeting, and we got a lot of things taken care of in that meeting. But I will now talk about our meeting this evening that we had, and we had a lot of important things on the agenda. We were able to finish our agenda. One, I won't go into all of them due to the hour and everything, but most importantly, I want to let everybody know that our light synchronization project, the one that we've been talking about for a whole lot of years up here, has been advertised. So it's in the newspaper. Excuse me. So in about 4 weeks, we will have all the results of everyone who wanted to bid on the process, which is exciting news to us in Public Works. Then what we will do in that period of the 4 weeks, we will, Public Works Department will take a look at each bid and make the evaluation on each one. Then probably in about, to be honest with you, you know how government is, it'll be about another 4 weeks. And then we will award the project. And then once that project is awarded, of course, we will keep you apprised of where we are on this project in Public Works. And then once that is awarded, then we will affirm that project, come back to the board, and try to figure out exactly when the process, since they're awarded that project, when that will start. But I will say this, we are still anticipated to have that project before the winter time this year. So that's that's incredible news, and we'll let you know where we are on that project, which is 100% funded by this board and TDOT, Tennessee Department of Transportation. So I'm real excited to let you guys know about that. Tonight, I don't know, well, since Finance did not meet, we had the CDBG action plan. That resolution 2019-41 was passed unanimously by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I understand it's not on the agenda for tonight, but maybe in 2 weeks we'll, it'll be back on the agenda, or it'll be on the agenda, but we did ask unanimous consent on that issue. We also are creating, and we'll try to get it to all the aldermen, but a draft mailer about our stormwater drainage ordinance to let you guys know and let all our constituency know just exactly what that ordinance is about. I'm excited to tell you, and so about that, we'll go ahead and send it to you guys, and then once you all take a look at it, if you see, it'll go back to Public Works, but we're probably going to look at it first before you guys get a hold of it. And then we'll make some additions and corrections on it if it's necessary, and then once you get your copy of it, after we've put our input in it, and if you see some things that need to be changed, we welcome your input, because we want it to everywhere. When you go, if someone calls you with your constituency, you'll be able to answer the questions on there, because you've had your hand into it too, to let them know. So I'm excited about that as well. One other thing, I know that we've all been concerned about, which especially in our ward and probably in the Indian Lake area more, y'all are kind of like a lot of in Ward 1 when it comes to the limb service. We've got a lot of damaged trees, a lot of limbs that need to be picked up. And what we're going to do, we've already created a request for proposal to try to get assistance here in Hendersonville to get those tree limbs picked up. Because I know in some areas of our city, it looks like Beirut did back in the 80s. I mean, it's horrible, like the way it's just like a bomb's gone off on some of those areas. So don't want to let our constituency up here know that we haven't forgotten about it, but we're probably going to need assistance because of the rain and some other situations that have occurred within our city. But we're going to try to get some help and relieve and get a request for a proposal to go out and pick up all the leaves, all the limbs and the trees that have fallen down that people have put in the front of their yard to get picked up. We appreciate you doing that. Just have patience with us. We're going to get that and have them go around, because we think that we need it maybe one time around, and then we'll be able to be caught up. Not only that, we're going also, you'll see in 2 weeks, a resolution to buy another dump truck or bucket truck to help us with the limb service in Hendersonville. Our trucks are getting old now, and so we've got the money that's in our budget to go on the state bid process and get us another bucket truck. So I'm excited about that, because that's going to help alleviate an additional problem we have in Public Works. Let's see here. Our recycling request for proposals about 2 weeks out, and we'll start getting information who's bid on that. So we have a lot of things going out. We're working on also, I wanted to let a lot of the folks know about Mary's Magical Place. We're trying to work out some agreement and some information on how we can help stop the flooding in that certain section of the park. And so we're real excited about that, and we should have that, and we'll let y'all know in about a couple of weeks when we get that resolved. Other than that, I guess that's about it. we're, again, I'm sorry, but we're, obviously, you guys know we're running late on limb service, but we're attacking that as well as all the drainage problems we've had. Garbage service, we even talked again about tonight. We had some additional questions, and so did the garbage folks. It's getting better. As you know, we're probably about maybe 2.5 to 3 weeks into the contract, and there are still misses. Not going to deny that, but it's less. The frequency is less. I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks it'll even be better, and then we'll. But if not, we're going to attack it because we certainly don't approve. If there's one miss, I mean, if I know this is crazy, but even if it's down to 6 to 10 misses each day, that's still bad the way that we look at it. We want 100%. Probably will never be that, but that's what we strive for in our garbage contract and our trash collection. Other than that, Mayor, that's all we have for tonight, and we look forward to giving you some additional information in about 2 weeks. And I'm open to any questions anyone has.
Chairman Skidmore, thank you. Chairman Sprouse, questions for the Public Works Committee, Chairman?
Yes, I wanted to see if, I wanted to see if the chairman and his committee would be open to a special called meeting second half of next week. Have an opportunity. I know we started yesterday and today doing the clippings, grass clipping and yard waste pickup.
Right.
Let's have 2 full weeks of doing that and then sit back and see how that's working, because I really want to make sure I understand logistically and financially how this works. Because
Sure.
we proposed the changes to the yard service, or we approved the contract without yard service with the idea that it's saving money. I want to get a better idea of what the added cost to the city is for us assuming that service. I also want to get, if we can, and I'll help with this because it's outside the Public Works, to get an idea of what the cost to the homeowner is, because if they're now going to be responsible for picking up a specific type of bag that was previously not required of them, that's going to be an increase. But the one thing that's really that I'm having a hard time wrapping in my head around is how the idea that we are able to absorb this extra service without there being any increase in cost or strain upon equipment and manpower, when a service that we already have, the limb pickup, is so overwhelmed that we're having to bring in an outside company to help us pick it up. And so I just need to figure out what the cost is for there, and
Sure.
we really can do that. And I want to see after 2 weeks if we're able to do Monday and Tuesday, because I'm sitting here thinking if we're approaching 300 miles of roads in Hendersonville and someone's doing 30 miles an hour and never has to stop and never has to backtrack and never goes,
Right.
never has to you worry about traffic or anything like that. If it was just 300 miles of straight road, it'd take you 10 hours, at 1.2 days just to drive it, much less to do all the work that when you're having to stop and doing that sort of thing. So let's see how it works after 2 weeks and what the adjustments are and what's it going to cost. I'll work with you on scheduling that.
Okay.
Just because I don't want you to be there and then I can't. So, but if you're open to that,
Absolutely.
I'd really like to think that's a discussion we
Very
need to have at
open
committee
with it.
level.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll do that. I'll get with Marshall in the morning and see what we can do. We'll start looking at dates and see what we can, and then I'll contact our committee and see what dates are there available and see what we can do to resolve that issue. I think that's a good question. In fact, we talked about a little bit about that tonight, about the grass clippings.
Mm-hmm.
And what the effect of that would be within the city. So I'm glad you're interested in that, because that's something that we've already been talking about. As far as the limb service or the request for proposal for that would not be included with the grass clipping. We just need to get those tree limbs picked up, because it looks, some sections of Hendersonville looks like there's bomb has gone off. And a lot of that has been up there literally for months. We've got, as one of my colleague, Vice Mayor Campbell said, we've got grass growing inside, inside the piles where the people have brought up.
Yeah.
And that's not acceptable. I know to me and Pat and Eddie, and I certainly know that it's not acceptable to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen as a whole, and I know it's not acceptable to the taxpayers of Hendersonville. So we want to correct that, and we're going to. It's just a question of, well, when we can go through the governmental process to get that proposal out and get moving on it. Other than that, any other solutions that you all can think of, we're always open to it. I am. And we appreciate everybody's hard work on the garbage issue. Any other questions?
Alderman Brown, question for the chairman of the Public Works Committee?
Yes, thank you. Do we have a number of homes yet for Waste Pro, and have they signed a contract yet? That's two questions.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the signing of the contract. I know they've got their bond for the city, which that was one thing we were real concerned about, as well as the contract. We have answered their questions as of tonight. They had about 20-something questions, and we had narrowed it down to about 4 or 5 that we had to answer as a committee. We answered those tonight. You're going to get a revised question to answer letter, or just a 8.5 by 11 sheet, that what those questions were, to let the aldermen know. And then as soon as that is given to you, and I hope that in 2 weeks, we'll hopefully have a signed contract, if not sooner. So to answer your question, we're real close with that.
Alderman Cunningham, question for the Public Works
But I
Commissioner?
think there was one more question he
sorry.
had. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you're right.
What was the other one? I'm sorry.
They were both in there.
Okay, good.
Number of houses and signed contract.
Oh, the houses. We are in the process of right now, and he said we should have those probably in about 2 weeks. He's got a gentleman that's going through, but I guess I can say this. He didn't say that I couldn't. They had an idea at our special committee meeting of what the houses count was, but they didn't want to really say because it wasn't official. But as they're looking at it now, it was a lot lower than what they had anticipated. So that's really good. And I sort of felt that, but we'll, as soon as he gives me an official count, we'll have the Public Works go in and do our count, and then we'll notify you immediately of what it is.
Can I ask a procedural question on that last statement of his?
He said he'd be willing to take questions.
Sure, yes, sir.
You give me 3 questions?
Yes, sir, go. Have many questions you want.
They're going to do a count and give us a number. And we're going to go behind them and count to see if that number's right?
Well, what we're going to do is look at their number, and then we'll probably actually just go to finance and tell them to pull up the numbers of what, of what the tax roll says, of what's been paid, of what the number is of households that have trash.
Okay, thank you.
It won't take very long, probably 15 minutes.
Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
There was a question about the brown paper bags. Is the city supplying them to the residences, or do the residences, do the residents have to go to Lowe's or Home Depot and purchase them?
I think it's both. I don't know how.
How could that be?
I think that if we run out of bags, I'm not really sure. I think that I can't answer that directly.
Okay.
I wish I could, but
All right.
I can't.
Well, I'd like to have an answer,
Yeah, tomorrow you'll
in
have
the
one.
next few days, or
Well, I'll get you one
when you
tomorrow.
get the count, because there's a lot of confusion about that. I've been asked that question, and I didn't quite
I have to
know what the
actually.
answer was.
Yeah.
And then the other question is, in the contract, is there a probationary period in the contract? And what does that consist of? Do they have to do they have to come up to par with the service, keep the service level at a certain level?
Yes, they do.
And what is our recourse if that level isn't, and our expectations are not met?
Okay,
In the
mine,
60 days, is it?
yes, yes.
Okay.
You're right.
I'd like to know those questions, because
Okay.
if we continue to have issues over the next 60 days and there's no resolution to some major issues that we're having, such as their employees telling our residents that they don't have backdoor service, they can't do this, they can't do that, and a lot of confusion is going on here. So I'd like to know the answer, what is our recourse as a city during that 60 days, and how do we measure those results, and how do we measure the service?
Okay, we'll take a look, and I'll get those questions answered for you.
Can I have a copy of that part of the contract?
You sure can. And I apologize if Public Works has not given you a copy of the contract. Have
Oh,
they
I
not?
never asked for a copy.
Oh, you have not?
No.
We'll get you a copy. I thought we had.
I
and
just
I'm
need
sorry for that.
I just need that
Yeah.
portion
That
of
portion?
it
Okay.
for the 60-day probationary period.
Okay.
How is that measured?
Sure.
Who measures it? Who's keeping track of that information?
Yeah.
And that,
Okay.
those
Sure.
type of things.
Well, I'll get you one, because you
I
should
come-
have it. Every alderman should have it, and I'll make sure you get it.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking of the service issues. I worked for a Fortune 100 company for many years with FedEx, and if we didn't perform, I mean, we had stipulations in our long-term contracts with our commercial customers. If we didn't perform to a certain level, they had a 30-day out clause on them.
Yeah, if I can respond, Mayor, we had back before this new contract with this new proposal, as you all remember, we were having trouble with Republic. And it was, we think now it was as bad as it was now. There were certain sections of Hendersonville that weren't even being picked up. I mean, subdivisions that were not even being picked up by Republic. They were missing them left and right.
Right.
And so when that was happening, and we'd had Republic for years in this town, it was just getting bad. And, we never could get a satisfactory answer, and we were in the process of even, I had spoken to Marshall about it, as well as not only Marshall, but our Public Works Director, Chip, Moore, dealing with that, and we were in the process of looking at that contract and getting ready, to possibility to have them come in and say, look, if it's not getting any better, we're going to have to
Well, I'd
punt.
appreciate that, Chairman, and
Sure.
thank you for all your hard work in your committee and
Well, I appreciate
Public
that.
Works, and I appreciate looking forward to getting
Yeah,
that.
we'll get that to you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Glad to help.
Thank you.
Alderman Campbell, a question for the Public Works Committee, Chairman?
Yes, sir, thank you. Or just a couple of comments regarding that, if it's okay, Mark.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, the probationary period is 60 days. I know that I spoke with Marshall yesterday. I had a meeting with him regarding waste and garbage, and he did say he was cutting a PO to purchase brown paper bags, and I hope that went through, and I hope we have purchased brown paper bags to put at the fire halls like we did in the past, and also here at City Hall, so citizens can come up and pick those up and collect their clippings and their trimmings and set them out for our trucks. Now, to answer Alderman Sprouse's question about 300 miles of roads, I've asked that question numerous times, and it's my understanding that the citizens are going to have to call City Hall on Friday and say that, hey, I'm going to have bags of clippings and yard waste to be picked up on Monday or Tuesday, and we will formulate a map, and we will send out a crew in a truck, and they'll go out and they'll pick your clippings and your trimmings up on Monday and Tuesday. Now, I made a comment now, if I call in and I set out 4 bags for my own pickup, Alderman Edwards has 5 bags, and he's my next door neighbor. He saw me put my 4 out. Oh, I better put my bags out, because they're coming by to pick them up, and Alderman Cunningham has 10 bags. Are we just going to pick up my 4 because I called them in and you didn't, and you used a black contractor bag and you used white trash bags from your kitchen, and I used the brown paper bag, so I know I'm going to get picked up. I would like to think we're gonna pick every bag that's out there up. You know, coming down that street, we see them, we need to stop, pick them up. And if we need to open that bag up, the brown and or the black bag and the white bag, when we get to our limb dump over here, our grinding facility, then we have an employee just rip that bag apart, dump it, and throw that plastic bag in a dumpster, and we'll haul it off at the end of the week or whenever it needs to be hauled off. That's just one of the issues that I saw with this whole contract, talking about when you asked about everything staying the same, and that's one of the big caveats to changing it, is the way clippings and yard waste would be handled. It's not an issue for everybody. Everybody didn't bag their stuff. Everybody didn't, and I get that, but for those who do, it's going to be an issue for a bit until we get acclimated to how we have to handle this. I just want everybody to know that, because I know you all get phone calls regarding the stuck garbage bag that's stuck in the can that didn't get picked up, since it's only once a week now, and or they didn't know to go next to my deck instead of behind my house where my cans are. That's another question we've been having. So those are just a few things related to the trash contract that I want to point out real quick. So thank you, Alderman Skidmore. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for pointing those key issues out. I know that we've been working on it, and I know it's been difficult for everyone. But we have, there's no excuses. We don't. That's one thing we kind of pride ourselves in Public Works is we try not to have excuses. There's no excuse. We want everyone to be happy. We firmly believe that one of the main things in our community is getting that trash picked up at a reasonable time. I know that sounds so small in the grand scheme of things, but actually it's not. And, like you all have always heard me say, and I'll close with this, I've always felt, as many years as I've been up here, as long as we are able to keep your garbage picked up at a reasonable time, keep taxes as low as possible we can, give you adequate fire and police protection in our city, then we're doing our job as aldermen. And if we fall below the line on that, then we need to step it up. And that's what this board is trying to do, and we're attempting to do it. And I believe firmly that we all are united and to do those kind of things, and we look forward to the challenge. So I thank you, and Alderman Sprouse will get right on that and see if we can't get something going. And thank you very much. If there's no other questions, I'll yield my time back to the mayor.
Alderman Hayes, do you have a question for the Public Works Committee
Just a
Chairman?
comment. Things are going great with Ward 5 in terms of the garbage. There's fewer and fewer misses. I don't get nearly as many emails or calls. Where I'm getting a lot more is about yard waste, and thankfully, Public Works, they're picking them up. I'm making the calls, or they're making the calls, and they're getting picked up. Yeah. The most angry, though, of the citizens are they're angry about the lack of communication.
Yeah.
Clear marching orders. This is what we're going to do. This is when we're going to do it. If you'll just tell them that and be real clear, are we buying the bags, aren't we? What day? Don't say even it could be any of 2 days. Tell them their day.
Okay.
Give them as many of the details. That is what is making them very angry.
Yeah. If I may respond, we talked about that a little bit about tonight. I think Alderman Roberson even made that issue. It's about the Public Works Department's lack of communication, and I admit that that they have, and it's my responsibility to try to correct that as the chairman of Public Works, and they're in the process of doing that. I've had calls too on emails about the lack of communication when they call in. It's not the aldermen they're all mad at, because some of the things we just don't know, but it's when they make the call into Public Works. The folks that know these things they should know, without a doubt. So we need the frontline people that are answering the phones. It's our responsibility in Public Works to give them the information, like what I would consider. I think Alderman Roberson actually was the one that said this, like a cheat sheet, of answers of which is a great idea. Of just the general questions that are asked within our community. The same things that we're asked. We should, every alderman, if we don't know it, we should be able to call Public Works and say right then and there, when you're talking to a constituent, I've had to do that, I say, give me 3 minutes and I'll call you right back. and call Public Works and say, hey, so this is my question. Does the trash can need to be in front of the closed gate, or in a gated community, or at their house where they have gates and they can't get in? Or does the gate need to be open? That was a big, believe it or not, a big issue we spoke about tonight. And it needs to be in front of the gate because you don't want to let your animals out. You don't want to give your combination or your numbers and your gate to the trash folks. You should put your trash out in front of the gate, let them get it, and that way they're not on your property or anything like that. We came up to that decision. So those are the things that we need to know as aldermen, and those people that are on the front line in Public Works. And when they get the phone call and they answer it, they ought to know just like that. They can look at that cheat sheet and say, okay, let's see, gated home. Yeah, that trash can needs to be out there, and they can just tell the people, and they'll come out. Information is your greatest asset in Public Works, and you got to run it like that, and that's what we believe, and we're going to try to exercise that and get that done. The cheat sheets, and also those cheat sheets we're going to send to the aldermen because you all get calls too, and that way you can use them if you want, or if you're like me, by the time you get it, you read it and you'll memorize it. You'll know it because people will call you and let you know. But that's a good question to ask, and thanks, Alderman Roberson, for even bringing that up.
Alderman Bolt, do you have a question for the Public Works Committee Chairman?
Yeah. In regards to, well, first of all, let me just say, we are so out of order, it's not even funny. So when Alderman Edwards comes up with a plan for you guys to comment on how we should follow procedures, please be open to it. So, whether it's limiting time where everybody's freaking out about, or how we handle committee reports, we need to do things differently. Having said that, it's because of the lack of information is why we end up in the situation that we're absolutely in at this time. Waste Pro, we're hammering them. A week ago, they had no idea how many houses we had. They're asking us, why can't you sign the contract? Well, 2 weeks ago, we don't know how many houses you have. Well, that's in our best interest as the customer. We're the ones that want to provide that type of information because we're the ones paying for it, right? So then we find out it's 18,000. Then a week later, it's 20,000. So, yeah, they've also said that they've never been in a negotiation like this. I have no doubt that that's true. So it's a mess. It really is. On the bags, I keep giving misinformation because I don't have the information. And Alderman Skidmore, you're being asked questions that you shouldn't be asked. This should have already been handled, and it should come to us to be able to make a comment on or vote on if need be. So that should have already been done. So the acting public works director and the mayor should have that all completed so that when by the time you get it, maybe you're fine tuning it or signing off on it. But, the bag thing, that's kind of should have been done a long time ago, obviously. Why didn't you tell us about the addendum about removing yard waste from the contract?
Because I didn't, to be honest with you, nor did the Public Works Committee know about that.
And that's why I don't want to ask you any more questions, because you're being asked questions that you're not in a position to answer, nor should you answer. So on the addendum issue, that's where the mess comes in, because we didn't know that the yard waste was going to be removed from the contract. So when we get in these uncomfortable situations where we're asking questions, there's a reason why we're in these uncomfortable situations, because we don't get information. And I'm pretty sure we would say that had we known there was an addendum, the vote would have been differently, and we wouldn't be having these conversations. It'd be a lot different. So I would just ask that the mayor make an effort to be more communicative, be more transparent, less secretive, and let's just try and get information out as much as possible. I kind of feel bad for you, Skid, that you're having to deal with some of this stuff, because it's really, I don't think is your particular responsibility, because you don't have all the resources at your fingertips. So I appreciate the work you're doing as best you can.
Thank you.
And let's just try and get as much information out to the community as we can. If it's letters, let's do it, let's get it out there. And if it's an issue of, we're going to call on Friday for you to pick it up next week, that is an absolute non-starter. That cannot happen. It will be a cluster beyond belief. That'll never work. Should have been already figured out a long time ago. So that's not going to work. So I would ask that whoever is responsible, just go back and see if we can come up with a different plan. Maybe we don't have the manpower, I don't know, 300 miles of roads. Anyway, let's, whoever can put together this plan at this point, it's all hands on deck.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please. Sure, and I thank you for your comments. As I've always said, that any kind of criticisms that are bestowed upon us in Public Works, or even as a Board of Aldermen, I always look at it as constructive criticism. It doesn't offend me when, people, when you say that, because we're all in this together is the way that I look at it. And, anything that we can do as a board, or if someone has a different approach, man, we're always open to it when these kind of things happen. It may be good or it may be bad, but it's better than flying by the seat of your pants. And so I thank every alderman for the information that they come and talk to Public Works about. Thank you, Alderman Bolt.
Alderman Skidmore, thank you. Chairman Campbell, Capital Projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to keep mine brief. I just want to talk about the Winston Hills Underpass, since Alderman Woodcock asked me about that last week. I've noticed that we've had our United States Senators, Lamar Alexander and Marsha Blackburn, both send letters to the Secretary of the Department of Transportation in support of our underpass to help push that along, all they can, doing what they can, basically. And also, let's see here, and that was on July the 15th is when our letter was dated, and also on July the 9th, the Tennessee Department of Transportation also sent a letter in supporting our Winston Hills underpass work. And also I've noticed that Fire Chief Bush has sent in a letter of requesting support for that project. You can see it on my phone right here. That's the letter from Lamar Alexander and Marsha Blackburn right there. You can go to the city's website, is what I'm going to tell you, and you can see all those documents in our Public Works office. And what's that?
They're on my Facebook page.
Yeah, okay, they're on his Alderman Sprouse's Facebook page as well. And but you can go to the city's website and you can pull up the Winston Hills Underpass and pull up the documents. You can see like the environmental study. You can see all the letters from the senators and from all the other department heads, from the city of Hendersonville, from the state of Tennessee, and other officials such as that, supporting that project and how it would impact this area and be a positive thing for us. So that's basically all I have tonight, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bradley.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. On a lighter note, we've had some serious discussions tonight. I talked to Mr. Edwards this afternoon and was telling him about an important Tennessee Supreme Court case that happened a few years ago, and he said it might be a good idea for us to talk a little bit about that tonight. Just take a few minutes. This is a historic week for the city of Hendersonville. We're the only city I know of in the state of Tennessee that was authorized by a Supreme Court case. On July the 25th, 1969, 50 years ago, Thursday this week, the Tennessee Supreme Court denied a petition to rehear a case that was involving the Hendersonville Utility District versus the city of Hendersonville. In a 3-2 decision, the Supreme Court of Tennessee said, yes, Hendersonville can be a city. And you go, how did that happen? Well, there had been several incorporation elections through the 60s that had failed. And finally, a very small group of citizens living over in the Shovel Drive area, they went out and counted enough people that they knew would pass a referendum to incorporate. They counted the actual votes, and 39 people signed a petition to call for this election. It was for 1/1800ths of a square mile. I mean, that's about 115 acres, like a little small farm, right down the street here on Gallatin Road. And so they called for this incorporation election. They had the vote in October of in June of 1968, and by a vote of 53 to 26, they decided to make themselves a city. Well, the utility district had fought this for many years because they said, we don't need a city, we've got a utility district, we can have private police, private fire, all of these things. So they sued and said the legislature could not have possibly intended to let such a small area become a city. And after over a year of litigation, the Tennessee Supreme Court, like I say, by a 3-2 vote, approved the city of Hendersonville being a city. And shortly thereafter, the city of like 251 people annexed 14,000 people. They went out every direction. And that's the city you have today. And a lot of people don't know that story. And I've presented on this to the Tennessee Municipal Attorneys Association more than once. And Hendersonville is the reason for so many of the annexation and incorporation laws we have in Tennessee, because they don't let you do anything the way Hendersonville did it anymore. You can no longer annex more than 25% of your square area, 25% of your area at one time. There's so many different things that are not allowed that used to be. They have various different rules about standing. You know, Hendersonville and Gallatin got into wars when Gallatin was bigger than Hendersonville. That's why we had the spite strip that you have coming into town. The laws have changed on that now, and Hendersonville would now win that battle, but we were smaller than Gallatin at the time. But, you know, we heard a lot about the 50th anniversary of Hendersonville, but I thought that this was a good time to bring this up because it's the week that the Supreme Court finally decided we could be a city. It'd be 50 years ago on Thursday. So I want everybody to mark that date and celebrate Hendersonville's 50th anniversary. And now the mayor knows this story because he's written a book about it. So, but this is an important time for our city. Thank you.
John, thank you. Alderman Robertson.
So, Mr. Bradley, when those 250 people, did they have once a week or twice a week garbage?
They had none. Alderman Robertson, they had none. They had none for about 5 years.
About 5 years, but then 5 years later, they did go to twice a week. One more thing we'll say, Mayor, just to mention the names of the people that were elected in that first election, because they're historic names in Hendersonville. They started out, you know, later they had 5 commissioners, but the first board only had 3 commissioners. And it was Dink Newman, L.H. Newman, L.W. Oliver Sr., and W.E. Cisco. They were the 3 commissioners, and the 3 of them elected Dink Newman as the first mayor. So Hendersonville's had lots of mayors through the year, but Mr. Newman was the first. Thank you.
If anybody would like to see a picture of those 3 people being sworn in, it's in my office.
There you go.
Feel free to join me sometime. Next, we have second reading of ordinance 2019-25. This is an ordinance accepting and appropriating a donation in the amount of $750 from Dr. Eddie Robertson to be used for the installation of First Responders Memorial. Dr. Robertson?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of second reading of ordinance 2019-25, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Now we have first reading of ordinance 2019-19. This is ordinance amending the Hendersonville Municipal Code, Title 4, Chapter 3, Comprehensive Classification and Compensation Plan. Alderman Bolt? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of first reading of ordinance 2019-19, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have first reading of ordinance 2019-26. This is an ordinance amending the Hendersonville Municipal Code, Title 20, Chapter 5, regarding parks and recreation regulations. Alderman Bolt? So moved. I have a motion. Second. And a second. Alderman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Director Gilly, come talk to us a second, please. I'm sure everybody has taken time to read this, but I just want to clarify a couple things, and I talked to you about this today. Back when I was liaison to Parks Board, we talked about changing some of this, and I think after that, allowing some folks that want to spend thousands of dollars in our city and in our parks, of giving them some type of advertisement. And one of the biggest pieces of discussion then, and Mr. Sprouse will remember this, and I believe Mr. Skidmore and some others may, was that is our parks going to look like billboards all around the outfield? And I don't want to see that. I don't think anybody else does. So can you explain how that's not going to happen, and maybe what will happen without letting, per se, maybe a cat completely out of the bag?
I think what we wanted to do with this work that you have in front of you is to give groups and our staff a mechanism where we could recognize very large donors to large capital projects. We currently have a policy in place with the different leagues and different teams that use the facilities. If they do put up, like you're saying, kind of like banners everywhere for certain games, they have to come down that night unless they have maybe a game the next day. So the intent is not to do that. There was a draft of something similar to this. It was when I was still an alderman floating around and Mr. Frost was still the liaison to the Parks Board, that I wouldn't have supported either, because it was going to basically put a sign on every soccer field, baseball field, everywhere. But this is intended for us to be able to get large corporate type donations. And to be perfectly honest, we've had some folks in the community over the past couple of years donate thousands of dollars to buy, let's say, bleacher covers is a good example. If somebody bought bleacher covers to go on a field right now, it's $13,000. And right now our policy is to just give them a little 5x7 plaque that says their name or their company or whatever. That may be good enough for some, but it's getting to the point where it's getting harder and harder as people are getting inundated with requests for funds. And to be honest, we can't do some of the big projects we do without corporate and community dollars as partnerships. So we're hoping that this will give us a mechanism to do some large scale type things.
Thank you. Appreciate you working on this. I think it's much better than it was back when you were an alderman and Mr. Frost was liaison. So,
yes,
and we'll support it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor of first reading of ordinance 2019-26, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have first reading of ordinance 2019-29. This is an ordinance amending the Hendersonville Municipal Code, Title 8, Chapter 1, regarding alcoholic beverages. Alderman Strauss?
Moved.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor of first reading of
Mayor.
ordinance, Alderman Strauss.
I just want to make sure very clear, and there's always some questions that come up whenever we're talking about changing our laws regarding alcohol and sale of alcohol in the city. This is not anything that changes how we issue permits, who gets permits, the number, well, a little bit, how many liquor stores we have in town. We have a provision in our code regarding a residency requirement. You have to live in Hendersonville a certain amount of time before you can apply for a permit to own a liquor store. The Tennessee State Supreme Court has struck that down as part of state law. And so this is just something to make us in accordance to them. So it's not changing location of liquor stores, number of liquor stores, anything like that. It's just taking away the residency requirement for someone who wanted, should we have a liquor store in the future or need to transfer ownership, it would not apply to them. So thank you.
Alderman Strauss, thank you. All those in favor of first reading of ordinance 2019-29, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have Resolution 2019-40. This is a resolution to approve a revised final development plan for Durham Farms Phases 1, 2, and 4, which includes lot reconfiguration and addition of villa units to the development located on Drakes Creek Road. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of agreeing with, of approving Resolution 2019-14, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. We have a no from Alderman Skidmore. Next, we have Resolution 2019-41. This is a resolution to authorize the submittal of an application for Community Development Block Grant, amended 2017-2022, the Consolidated Plan, and 2019 to 2020, the Annual Action Plan. We have a motion and a second. Alderman Cunningham?
Now, this was supposed to go through finance, but it didn't, so I guess as long as it went through one committee, we're good? Okay. Okay, so we're good, right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're all doing things legal here. Thank you, Mayor.
All those in favor of Resolution 2019-41, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have Resolution 2019-45. This is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Vogue Towers. I so move.
Second.
Motion is second. Alderman Strauss?
Thank you. I think Dr. Robinson had a little bit to do with this. Appreciate you using your expertise. professional expertise helping with this. I just have a couple of questions. I recognize that this is the type of lease where the person who is going to be leasing the land from us is going to be making a significant capital investment in the land, and there's going to be a certain expectation that they're going to be able to have a return on investment. When I look, though, on page 48, if you look at section 8, we're giving them a 5-year initial term with the right to 5 additional 5-year terms. But that is only to be at their discretion. Is there any foreseeable circumstance where over the course of the next 30 years that we may want to terminate the agreement? Is there something, if we run into, there's a change in technology, if there's a change in the company, if the property is abandoned, are we going to have a situation where a future board is going to say, man, I wish that they didn't continue to be able to renew this agreement? I want to make sure that they know that they're going to get the ROI, and maybe the city attorney, anyone who has any input on that, is that something we're going to regret, that a board would regret down the road?
Alderman Robertson, you want to try that one?
I believe they do, but Mr. Bradley, I haven't.
I don't know how we can know what we might regret in the future, Mr. Sprouse. Obviously, we might regret a lot of things. But obviously, if the technology changes that we don't have cell towers anymore, they're going to terminate the agreement.
Right.
They would not continue to do business. That's covered in the agreement. We also have surety that's been put up as being required so that if the tower has to come down because of a change in technology or whatever, we have the funds in which to make sure that's taken off of our park and it's restored back to its current state.
Yeah, and I'm looking beyond just more the fact that beyond just the change of technology, but the idea that something happens and they're just not a good tenant. Are we?
If they breach the contract, we can void it, Your Honor.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Sprouse,
That's the
just
first
like any other
question.
contract, breach of contract.
The second question, if you're good with that, I'm good with that. The second question is page 48, section 8. It was the same, I'm sorry. With the sublease, that they have the ability to sublease without, or to transfer the agreement without us having to give any consent. I know that really the closest thing that I think that we have in that situation is when we've had the cable franchise, that when they change, when it changed from AT&T to Comcast, or when it changed from Par Cable to AT&T, they still had to come before this board for that to be for that transfer of contract to be approved. I don't think we need to get into the nuts and bolts that when they decide that they're going to have Sprint on the tower and AT&T on the tower, and then they hit a deal with Verizon. But if it doesn't need to come to the board level, but is there any sort of mechanism where we could protect ourselves with that change of company, particularly if the primary company who holds the lease?
Yes, if I may, John. We added, after our negotiations began, a language that would give the city a certain notice. I think it's a 90-day notice, I believe. And also that they would only be able to transfer the ownership to a telecommunications company in the tower business whose primary business is that. So they couldn't sell it to Google, but they have to sell it to a company that has a reputation that's been in the business.
So basically, we're relying upon, this is a good thing, we're relying then upon the definition of an FCC, because it's going to be someone then who's going to have to clear all those hurdles to be in that business. We're good.
And also, I did contact the FCC and due diligence, and this company, in fact, is a minority-owned company. Okay. It's a Tennessee company, and it is a minority-owned company, and that they have an excellent rating with the FCC. There's no complaints, no any types of show cause hearings had been brought forward.
If they're a defined carrier, I'm good with that. Thanks.
And in that regard, too, obviously, if there is an assignment of the agreement, they're going to be bound to the exact same terms that the current carriers. Now, there's one other change that's on the bottom of page 46, just to point out, since we're about to vote on this. They contacted us today and said there was a typographical error at the bottom of that page talking about the minimum tenant monthly rent. That should be $1,500 instead of $1,000. So I just want you to be aware of that. It's not a material provision, and we would not have any problem with that, but I just wanted that to be in there when the board votes to approve it.
Thank you.
All those in favor of accepting Resolution 2019-45, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have appointment of Roy L. Jones as Finance Director. I so move. Second. A motion and a second. Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor.
In my tenure as alderman, I have been through 5 department director searches and hiring. In these searches, a process was performed which involved our Human Resource Department and also guidance from MTAS and our MTAS representative regarding applicants' review and the MTAS testing. And I rarely read from my notes, but I'm very uncomfortable with this subject matter, so I'm just being honest. Also, in that time, this board has since passed legislation, a resolution regarding the hiring process for directors. And at the last meeting, the mayor stated that he may or may not understand the legislation, but that he was not willing to follow that legislation. And in this particular case, I'm fine with that. I'm letting that go. But what I'm asking tonight is that we, as the governing body, at the least, do our due diligence and go through the same processes that we have done in the last 5 hirings, which is applications go through our HR department, and then they go through MTAS and the MTAS testing assessment. I have been told by our MTAS representative that there's quite possibly another applicant, possibly another one, that he has recommended at least be considered for an interview with the mayor and to go through the sake of the process that has been followed in the last hirings. And for the sake of continuity, equity, transparency, and fairness, I just ask that this board consider deferring the vote, not for a long period of time, just for a period of time where all applicants that at the least our MTAS representative has recommended have an opportunity to interview and be considered. There was a citizen who came up and spoke during citizens' comments. I thought she was very eloquent. I thought it took a lot of courage. And I also appreciate what she had to say. As an alderman, I have to ask the board for this consideration that we do our due diligence. And this is not about a singular person or a singular applicant or multiple applicants. This is about a process that has been gone through in the last couple of years, and for the sake of equity, I ask that we consider that process be followed here. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Edwards.
I was going to ask the mayor, can you explain from the very beginning of the application process, like what all did you go through in order to get to this point of recommending Mr. Jones?
I appreciate that. I've got some notes here. So the process began on March 15th. Knowing that this would be the most difficult position in the city to fill, we sought outside help to find applicants. We ended up with a strong pool of applicants and actually one finalist from Pennsylvania. There's a temporary clerical error on the advertisement, but did not seem to hurt the search. With the help of Gary Jekyll of MTAS, we received 7 resumes by April 30th, and then Gary evaluated and scored those. He found that 3 stood out. I created an interview team to consider the best 3 candidates. The interview team included a former finance director for Hendersonville, a current finance director for Portland, and a retired business executive. Of the top 3 candidates, 1 dropped out. The interview team then ranked those remaining 2. The best candidate was asked to take a personality test evaluation. He did. We've done that in the past with Dr. Gary Kaufman. Meanwhile, more resumes came in, and one of those stood out when Gary Jekyll looked it over. I asked the interview team to come together again to consider the additional candidate. These were volunteers that certainly felt bad about asking them to come together a second time. After the interview team scored that additional person, I asked that person to take a personality evaluation. And after receiving Dr. Kaufman's evaluation, I sat down with that person, that's Roy Jones, and I offered him the position.
Very well, thank you very much. I might want to hear, we see his resume. I'd like to hear from Mr. Jones, if you want to come just introduce yourself, put a face with a name and a resume.
Oh, hold on one second, Roy.
Roy Jones. I live at 100 Wyndham Drive here in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. I've met most of you. We had a little time together about a week or so ago, but I'll be glad to answer any other questions. Some of you I haven't communicated as much as with others, so whatever you'd like to ask.
I just have one open-ended question.
Sure.
What do you think you can add to the city, specifically to the finance department?
Well, I've got over 35 years of experience in the public accounting field. I am a CPA. I have a law degree, although I do not practice and never have, but I do have a law degree. I have a certified fraud examination certification. I am excuse me while I go through all this, I am a certified global management accountant. I am a senior professional in human resources, and I am a certified government financial manager. All those certifications were over a period of the last 20 years or so. I have a BS in accounting, have a master's in public administration, and like I say, I have a law degree. I have worked when I first came out of school, I was, worked for a public accounting firm. Did about, 13, 14 years for typical CPA, what you'd think, tax returns, audit clients, management services, that kind of things. Went into private accounting, worked for a large printing company in Nashville. Went to work for a couple of construction companies. And then when a position opened up at Metropolitan Government in Nashville, where I am currently still employed, Assistant Director in the Department of Codes and Building Administration. I went there and I actually started in Social Services Department, but because of my background in construction, they thought it was a pretty good idea. So I moved to the Department of Codes. I've been with Metro 23 years, with Codes for 21. I believe I can give you some experience that you may not have. I've talked not with all of I talked with the assistant director there, and I understand he's a very, very good person. He's done a lot of remarkable work for the city. He hasn't been here that long. I would like to think that I might be able to mentor him a little bit in some of the experience that I have had. Also, going to need to rely upon him to learn the job here if I'm fortunate enough to get it. But I believe that's the part of it. Another part, too, is that a couple of years ago, we've been in Hendersonville now for 4 years, but I've lived in Nashville all my life, so I've been a resident of the area. And right as we moved here, I talked to the council ward people, not council, alderman people, and was brought forth as a member of the Personnel Appeals Board here in Hendersonville. I wanted to be a part of the city and try to plug in a little bit better. And so when this opportunity came up, I kind of stumbled across it, and I just thought it would be a good match living here and with the experience I've got, and hopefully try to give some stability and a little bit of reliability and credence to the position. And that's not disparaging anybody that's been in that position before.
That's all the questions I have. That's all I have. Thank you.
What if you can hang on here for a second? Thank you, Alderman Edwards. Alderman Strauss.
Mr. Jones, thank you for the time we shared last week. You answered my questions that I had about background and working with government. One of the good things we can say in his behalf is he comes from a government with a legislative body of 40, the second largest in the country. Mm-hmm. So this is not even quorum for the Metro Council that we have right here. So we're a small group for him. Some of my questions really have to deal with process. Because, and I think that even the conversation that we had at the beginning of this meeting shows this exposure that we have when we carry government processes outside the involvement of government employees who are tasked and trained to work with those issues. I think and those concern me. You can make good decisions with a bad process, but it's just a lot harder. And it's harder to defend bad decisions when you don't follow a process. And it bothers me if I went to any sort of significant public safety decision, and I went to our police chief or our fire chief or the executive officers under their command and said, what can you tell me about this? And they say, I don't know. I don't have any of the paperwork on it. I don't know. I can't even, and if I went to a city engineer and wanted to talk about a project that we were doing, a multi-million-dollar project, and they said, I don't know. That makes me nervous. Because we're sending out public decisions to a private group who, quite frankly, you may call it a clerical error. They were not qualified to do a public hire. We looked at the same time at what our HR department did to put out for a listing for Public Works Director and compare it. I mean, I think they probably went out with just days of each other to what was going out for the Finance Director. And it's not a clerical error to leave off the contact information if you want to apply to the job. That's pretty simple. But then you get into further stuff about retirement and how it works in. One of the things that someone's going to look at, they're going to come look for another municipality, is what the pay grade is, how it fits in, how it's going to work with the retirement programs. Those are things that are going to significantly affect your applicant pool. And so I have questions about, I'm glad that the process was opened back up for Mr. Jones. But I'm concerned that if there are other applicants who were not given the same opportunity, does that expose us in a way we really shouldn't be exposed? And then if the people who are primarily tasked to defending against such exposure can say, I don't know. I don't even have the documents to review. That bothers me. So I apologize, Mr. Jones, this is not about you. It's just how we continue to get here. And we're almost dared to raise questions, to defend policy and transparency and equity, that if we aren't doing those things, we're not being kind. Because when we do defend equity and transparency, we're being accountable. I don't know what we do. I'm open to suggestions. But I appreciate y'all having the conversation. Thank you.
Roy, I think we're finished with questions. If you want to sit down, you don't need to stand there the whole time. Okay. But I want to follow up with what I was saying a little bit earlier. As I've said before, determining compensation is very difficult in these situations. Our department heads do not fall under the personnel rules, and that's what gives guidance and compensation. Before I was mayor, the city hired 2 people at roughly the same time in the highest pay table. One came in at a step 1, another came in at a step 2. With that history, finding consistency is impossible. Ron Minix left the city at a 26.9. I've offered Roy to start at pay grade 26.5. His salary will be $10,000 less than Ron's, and Roy will be leaving a job in Nashville to come here to make $20,000 less. We're getting a great deal and an exceptional candidate. His references are solid. Here's one from one person that we talked to that worked with Roy for 12 years. He is honest, honorable, and has high integrity. I consider him a fine man. I would have nothing bad to say about him. As you know, during the process, the board passed Resolution 2019-22. That was in late April. 6 weeks after this process had begun. By then, we had several applicants, none of whom expected to have their names announced publicly unless they were nominated for the position. They all knew that their names would be public record. None of them expected to be the focus of a public meeting or have their names announced as a finalist. There's a big difference between having your name announced and having your name available for public record requests. I continued to follow the rules that were set when the process began, not the ones that changed during that process. Peter Voss and I have communicated about the resolution. Chris Taylor and I also had some conversation about compensation when Peter was out of town. As much as reasonable, I am trying to comply with the resolution, even though it is not retroactive. I did several tasks that were not required of me, including some that add transparency. I informed the Finance Committee of the progress several times. I asked Chairman Cunningham to meet with the top candidate. I brought in MTAS. I brought in an interview team. I had candidates do a personality evaluation. I sent an email to all aldermen explaining the top candidate's credentials and his suggested compensation. I invited the board to meet the top candidate, none of which were required. I will not mention names, but there was a candidate who previously left the city without 2 weeks' notice. That early departure was followed by problems with the city completing our audit on time. We were cited for being 6 months late on the audit as a result. I'm frankly surprised that anybody thinks it's a good idea to move forward with that candidate. Had I considered the candidate, I would have expected outrage and revolt. Considering the outrage 6 months ago over the late audit, I feared that even suggesting this person for the position would cause protests from the board. As much as I would like to consider that person, I could not ask you to put yourselves at risk or the city at risk again. I wanted that person to stay with the city before, and I asked how I could make that happen. However, the lack of 2 weeks' notice is standard. It is expected by organizations nationwide, and the lack of it is a red flag. We cannot put the city in that kind of risk again. I will not put the city in that kind of risk again. When the three people doing the initial interview came together, they asked me not to waste their time. They were very clear that they would volunteer their time, but not for pointless interviews. Very clear. Then I asked them to come together for a second time. I will not ask them to meet for a third time. They have helped us identify the best candidate, and that's Roy Jones. I will not mention other names other than Roy's because it's simply unfair to those people. When the job was advertised, the expectations were different than they will be with the next department head in that next search. I know of only one candidate of all those who told their employer that they are applying for this position. To announce other people's names puts them at risk with their current employers. Of course, their names are public record. However, there's a huge difference between having your name as part of the public record and having your name mentioned at a public meeting on television and on YouTube. I appreciate those people applying. Why should we cause problems for them? I appreciate the help of our HR staff, of Gary Jagle with MTAS, of the interview team, Dr. Kaufman, and the alderman. I appreciate the advice you have all given me. It is advice, it is not a mandate. The charter requires that I submit Roy to the board for approval. It is not the responsibility of our HR staff to bring it to the board. It is my responsibility, and I bring Roy because he has a solid work history with the experience and education we need. He was the top recommended person, even though he does not have a CFMO designation. However, we are not in the bind that we were a year ago. We now have one person with CFMO, another will soon have it. Roy will seek it as well. The greatest priority is to bring Roy in, as he said just a few minutes ago, and let him lead the finance office towards stability and the completion of our audit. We have an opportunity in front of us. We can tell the community that we are serious about providing services and working together as a board should. We have that opportunity right now. We can hire a Hendersonville resident who is the most qualified for this job. We can avoid problems of the past and get our finance office back on track. Again, no offense to anybody. We can tell the finance staff that they no longer have to carry extra weight. We can look forward to having an audit completed on time and other staff receiving the financial information they need. For the sake of all citizens, please vote for Roy. Alderman Bolt.
Thank you, Chairman. I wish you had not made those comments about a possible candidate because it's pretty easy to put that together. And if that person was here, that person would not say, I'm unprepared to answer those charges, they would answer those charges. So I think that was unnecessary completely. And you're familiar with this, and I'll make it short because this is kind of like a Scott Sprouse story. So, because I have a story. So a long time ago, 14 years ago, I was really upset at Tennessee State Soccer Association, how they were doing things, procedures, processes, favoritism, all that stuff. Well, I didn't know how to fix it, but I sure was upset about it. So I ran for president of Tennessee Soccer. That's 44,000 players, 100 associations, hundreds of paid coaches, so on and so forth. Well, I didn't think for an instant I would win that. Not for a second, never crossed my mind. Well, I did. So immediately knew I immediately knew what I didn't know, which is most everything. So what I did immediately was I asked, well, who's our legal counsel? And they said, well, we don't have one. I said, you got to be kidding me. The organization this size? So what I did is I reached out to a friend of the organization who was Mark Nolan, the same attorney that the mayor used to go after the city attorney. So I knew that guy, and he was helpful to us. And so, and then I tried to attract really good board members and try and get up to speed. So it's a long way of saying that any mayor coming into this is new, and some mayors are newer than others. So I would ask that the mayor in the future always go through human resources, don't bypass human resources, use the city attorney more than what he currently does, because that's a wealth of information, and it will only reduce your liability. Only reduce your liability. It'll be very helpful to you. I don't want to drag this out. I feel bad for Roy here. I see other lights here. I just asked everybody to be brief on it. I met with Roy. I'm not excited about how we got to this point necessarily, but I met with Roy, and I'm very comfortable with Roy. I think he's a very good candidate. I reached out to Gary Jekyll, who did not talk to Roy. I wished he would, but we talked about him, and also he had talked to other committee members that interviewed Roy, and they were very comfortable. And I know a couple of those people, and I'm ultimately confident in what they would come up with. So it's a long way of saying, I'm sorry you have to sit through this. It's not really kind of how it shouldn't be this way, but that's where we are. But I will support going ahead and moving forward with Roy this evening. Thank you.
Alderman Bolt, thank you. Alderman Brown, I think I turned your light off at one point. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Want to answer another question? Yeah. Unless you want to do it back there. Okay. I will say, before I ask you this question, I'll let you stand there and sweat a minute, which I don't. You look pretty cool to me when I shook your hand the other night. You seem pretty collected, so I don't think you probably sweat much. So, yeah. Unless you're
You'd be surprised.
Unless you're working in the yard, maybe. So.
Yeah.
I will have to agree that I don't totally like how we got to this point. I think we could have done much better. I think we'll learn from this. We have legislation that's been passed since then that I think we'll handle hiring the next person a little bit different. But we are here with you standing over there. So I will say that I have did some talking about you in the past couple of weeks, and what I've heard is pretty good. And I haven't talked to this lady, but she may have some secrets that, he's sweating now. You see.
No, wife can't testify against the husband.
There you go. There you go. There you go. But anyway, I've had some conversations about you, and they've been pretty good ones. And I talked to Mary Lou Piper for 45 minutes. And I've always had a really high regard for Mary Lou and what she did for this community. And as a friend and advisor now, we talk occasionally. And she was very impressed with your credentials, very impressed with you, the way you presented yourself and handled yourself. So were the other people on that committee. I also talked to Mr. Jekyll about you, who hasn't spent any time with you, but he's did some talking about you too. And he feels like you would be a good guy for this position. So that being said, I have a question now. You're waiting on that. I have a comment and another question. The question would be is, I know you're still teaching at Cumberland. You're a busy guy. I mean, I look when you got some of your credentials, and you and I got to be pretty close. to time served, so you're running a lot. How much time are you going to spend down there? How's that going to affect your job here as Director of Finance?
Well, because of the time issue, normally what I have done when I got my master's degree from Cumberland, the year after that, they asked me to come back and teach graduate courses, basically in human resources and what I call, it's a law course for graduate students, not to teach them about law necessarily, but to give them enough information so they can be aware of things that might happen in an employment situation. We talk about, harassment, sexual harassment, and, all those kind of things. Talk about employment at will. We talk about drugs in the workplace. We talk about different topics. Give them enough information so that when they're out as a manager or supervisor, they may see something come down the pike and say, oh yeah, I remember him saying something about that. I need to check with my our legal attorney or whatever. So I've done that for 13 years now, I believe, and because of the lateness of the season, I was asked about 2 months ago to continue those classes. Now, what's happened in the last basically 13 years, I teach a Saturday class, 3-hour Saturday class, which I would not think would affect this job. There is a Tuesday, Thursday.
The mayor didn't tell you about Saturday morning?
Well, we'll make arrangements. I'll do it Saturday afternoon. We can do that.
All right, go ahead.
But there's a class on Tuesday and Thursday that's an hour and a half long. Starts about 7:15. I wouldn't be able to get to work till around 9:15 or so. It could take me a while to get up here. That class runs from roughly the middle of September to the first week of December. So we're talking 2 months, a little over 2 months. After that, that would not be a problem. The mayor and I talked. If it comes down to this time next year and if there's been any confrontation at all or any kind of problem with that, then I would not teach those classes anymore, and I would let Cumberland know that. But I'm an adjunct professor, and, kind of just teach, a class at a time. It's possible that I could, at one time I taught just Saturday classes, and it was just spread out over a longer period of time. Right now I just teach in the fall semester, but I could teach maybe fall and, spring if it worked out that way or whatever. So there's some ways to work around it after this year, but I'm pretty much made a commitment to them, and I would like to honor that if at all possible, and I'd like your understanding on that.
Okay, just that being said, I think I can make the statement, tell me if I'm wrong. You just seem like the type of guy that will get it done whatever it takes. If it takes 40 hours, we'll do it. If it takes 60 hours, we'll do it. If it takes 35 hours, we'll do it. But it'll get done. Is that a good statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good statement.
Okay, the statement I would like to make about your resume has nothing to do with numbers.
Okay.
You got tons of stuff on here about numbers. I think one of the most impressive things on your resume that will enhance your service to this city is the fact that you're an attorney. I won't say anything about my attorney friends now, but you've been to law school, and so you obviously know within this game that you're playing here, in Metro and here, boundaries, where you can be, where you can't be, what you can do, what you can't do, what departments do, what can cities do, what can we do with budgets, and so on and so forth. I find that a plus on your resume. I mean, a big plus, that you've taken the time to get a lot of schooling, but especially that one. So, like I said, I'm not thrilled with the way we got to this point, but I hope I'm very pleased with you, because I'm going to vote yes for you.
Well, I hope you are too. I think you will be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alderman Brown, thank you. Alderman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question's for Peter Voss, our HR Director back there in the back, if you don't mind coming up and answering a few questions. And thank you, Mr. Jones. I was looking at your resume. We were trying to figure out where we knew each other. Possibly CNC Mechanical or Capital Engraving. I deal with both those companies. I thought, that might be it. Goes back a few years, but yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Voss. I was just curious, what has been your involvement in this process to date?
My involvement to date,
None of the applications, resumes came through our office. I did review, look at some of the advertisement, try to make some corrections, and let the mayor know, what I saw in there. But that's all. I mean, there was one application that came through, one resume that came to me because they tried to submit it on the weekend, but it wouldn't go to the private company's website. And I immediately forwarded it to the same address and then contacted the people and said it was out there waiting on them so they could review it. But I haven't seen any resumes. I haven't had any part of that at all.
Yes, sir. So did you have any conversations with the mayor regarding this position at all to date, since it's been out there to this point?
No.
Did you help with the income level that was being decided upon?
No.
So our HR had nothing, no input at all with this?
No.
Okay, sir. All right. And that gets back to being a little disappointed in this entire process. And also, when this process is over and done with and we've selected the individual, what is going to be required of the city in making this whole within our own, this is a public, we're a city. We have to have public records. Every piece of paper, document, phone call needs to be logged in about this particular transaction that has happened for searching for a finance director. What exactly is going to be involved with that, sir?
Well, with all of our recruitments, I'm required to keep all that material for a certain length of time. And I would hope that we would be able to get that material from this company, the resumes and anything we can recover, and get it stored and have it available in case we do have any questions or
Record
lawsuits
request.
or
Any public record
any
request?
public record request.
Yes, sir.
We get our fair share of those.
And in our HR department, are we overtaxed with work to do? Is this something outside of our realm of expertise here, sir?
We're always busy, but
I understand that.
when we get the requests, they come through, we process them and put them right in line.
And I understand we have some titles with a lot of our employees that are sort of sought at nationwide. Some of the letters that are on the backside of your names, referring to HR individuals that are really well versed in that department. I was just curious. I think we have three individuals that are all certified.
We have three individuals in my department that are all senior certified professionals by the IPMA. And if I heard you right, you're a senior certified professional with IPMA too?
With SHRM.
SHRM?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
We
there
have
you go.
4.
Well, there you go. Well, I know that certification means something to the HR profession and to that particular expertise, and that's why I was wanting to point that out. We have these 3 individuals here in our HR department that are quite capable of carrying on this search for our city and getting the job done, keeping those costs in-house versus going outside of our city and not really having any control over the process. So that's basically all I wanted to point out and put it in part of the record tonight, and I certainly do appreciate you, Mr. Voss, for your time. Thank you.
Alderman Campbell, thank you. Alderman Strauss.
Thank you. Anyone who works for the city is going to know a couple of things about me. That I'm going to follow the process. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. If you do something wrong, we're going to try to see what we can do to fix it. If you do something intentionally wrong, we're going to have a difficult conversation. But if you do a good job, I'm going to go to bat for you every time. I'm going to defend your work. I'm going to defend your reputation. And that's going to extend to former employees. Probationary employees, our previous assistant finance director was a probationary employee, are not required to give 2 weeks' notice, nor is the city required to give 2 weeks' notice to probationary employees. I know that the previous holder gave notice, worked schedule the departure with the department, even worked till 7 o'clock that night before she left the employee of the city, even though her supervisor left at 4, trying to make sure the books get done. And that's not out of the ordinary, because she worked most nights after hours. But here's the situation. This is uncomfortable, but if we're going to have the conversation, if we're going to tell one side of the story, let's tell the rest of it. What would you do if you were hired to come work for the city of Hendersonville, and it was explained to you that there was opportunity to move up, come in, do some time, and all of a sudden it didn't materialize? Promises made weren't kept. Situations described did not materialize. And you found yourself working more and more, doing not just your job, but the job of other people, with no sign to be able to correct the situation, get anyone to correct the situation, or to be promoted into a situation where you could correct the situation yourself. And just up the road is your old job, still open. But not for long. What would you do? I'd go back. That's what that employee did. I'd ask anyone who worked with her at the city to provide testimony to her character, her work ethic, and her ability. Anyone within HR to talk about the circumstances and the timing that she left, the notice that she gave, and how that departure was scheduled. This may not be the person that we hire for this position, but it's not someone that should be discredited in this forum. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Boss, thank you. All those in favor of accepting Roy Jones as our finance director, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes 10-0 with one abstention. Do I have that correct? Anybody vote no? Thank you. Next, we have a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry, we have three items. We have three items under that. That's just for consideration. Motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously.